My topic tonight, as I mentioned, is non-wedding event photography. Okay, and first of all, I want to set, avoid setting unreasonably high expectations for me. I've only been doing this 5 years. Okay, I'm not holding myself out as anyone who's like this, phenomenally successful or even, really that great. Oh, wait, I forgot one thing before I get started. How many of you are going to join us for drinks afterwards at Wild?
Where is it?
Right around the corner, a block and a half away. It's a real fun, and they have food too. Food and drink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That maybe a dozen people. Okay. Nima, can you call over there and just let them know that? Because I had told them I'd call and give them a rough guesstimate. Tell them 12 to 15 people. Wild, W-I-L-D-E on Broadway. Okay. So, but I feel like I've done a lot in these 5 years. And one of the reasons for that is that I've done pretty much a little bit of everything. Like back in the days when most of you know, I was a lawyer for like 20 years before I quit to become a photographer. And I used to say, when I was a young lawyer getting started and trying to bring in clients, and clients would come to me and say, well, I don't know if I should hire you. This other guy has like 20 years of experience. You've only been doing this for 6 years or whatever. And I had a favorite line I used to use back then. I don't know how true it was, but I used to like to use it. I said, well, you know what? It's possible to have 20 years of experience, but it's also possible to have 1 year of experience 20 times. And just do the same thing over and over and over again and not really learn anything. And I feel like in my photography, I managed to get something wrong in every job that I do. I freely admit that. But in the process, I learn on every job that I do, and I get better. And I can truthfully say, I look back at stuff that I got paid to do 3 years ago, and I feel like I'm light years beyond that now. And I'll probably, 3 years from now, I'll look back on the stuff that I showed you today and say, oh my God, I can't believe I actually showed that in public. But the fact is, the stuff that you're going to see tonight, I'm showing to my clients, and they're pretty happy with it. In fact, they're happy enough with it that they're buying albums and they're referring other people to me, and they're coming back to me when, for giving me repeat business. So I must be doing something right. I don't think I'm ever going to be like a master of light or these various things they talk about but I don't think that's what it takes to become like a good event photographer. I think what it takes is to be able to tell a story. Okay, you might, I don't think I will, truly, genuinely, modestly say that I don't expect any of my photos or any of the photos I'm going to show you tonight to be like on the cover of, like Bar Mitzvah Photographer magazine or whatever is that the non-wedding event equivalent of all these wedding glossy wedding photography magazines that are out there. But I do feel immodestly that they tell a pretty good story, that when you add them all up, they tell a pretty good story from each event. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to do this a little differently from most photography or photographer presentations that I go to and that you probably go to too. Usually you go to one and the photographer will show you like the 30 best images they ever took in their entire career. And and just go through this whole slide, and you get at the end, you say, oh my God, this guy's amazing. That's like phenomenal. You might see like you might see the only good picture they took in 2010 or whatever, but you're going to think, oh my God, you're just going to assume that all the rest of them are really great. Well, I'm too lazy to do that. I'm not going to go through all my photos to try just to find the best ones. But also, I don't think that's fair, because when you get hired to shoot an event, you're not going to show your client 2 photos. You're going to show them 30 or 50 or 100 or 500 or 1,000, depending on the nature of event. And so the question is, so in total, what do these photos add up to? Do they tell a story or do they not? Do they do they accurately reflect what it was like to be there or not? And how do you do that? Like, how do you actually, add value as a photographer? Like, so in those 5 years that I've been at this, okay, well, I've shot, weddings, I've done bar and bat mitzvahs, I've done award luncheons, I've done fundraiser galas, I've shot carnivals, kids' birthday parties, grandparents' birthday parties, band reunions, like you name anything where like a group of people are getting together and might want pictures of it, and pretty much I've photographed it. And so the question is like, so what are the common themes that high school graduations? Okay, I've done that. So what are the themes that run through these, and how do you get into this? And also, sometimes I go to these presentations and I'll see and a photographer will show me a picture, an image. I prefer image to picture, and you'll see this. It's gorgeous. The lighting is just gorgeous, and these people look like models, probably because they are. And it's in an Italian villa, and there's a Ferrari in front of them, and they're on their way to their wedding, and it's like, oh my God, this photographer. But that is okay. Give me two models, a Ferrari and an Italian villa. I could probably take pretty nice photos too. But how do you take photos that are exciting and interesting and beautiful, in a 1955 log cabin church in Skokie, which is where I shot my last wedding. Okay, I'll sometimes have clients come to me and they'll say, well, we don't want to spend a lot of money on this photography because the room is, it's really pretty ugly, and so we're not going to get good photos. And my response to them is, well, that's when you need to spend more money on your photographer, because you need somebody who can actually take a room that isn't very special and make it look special, and make it look memorable and beautiful. Okay, someone who doesn't know what they're doing isn't going to be able to do that. So I think you want to think about that when you're shooting these things. Like, how do you take an event that maybe it's not so memorable, and make it memorable while not losing the flavor, while still being true to the actual flavor of the event. So, and there's another issue that we have to contend with. You may have seen this photo, if you've been around CPS for a while, you may have seen this photo before. I shot this photo I was hired to photograph an 8th grade graduation party. It was on someone's front lawn. It was a very nice affair. These families spent some bucks on this thing. And this was the scene. Every time I tried to get a group of 8th graders together to photograph them, this is what I faced. I would have arrayed behind me, and look, you see the guy shooting with his iPad there? You have iPhones, you have high-end DSLRs, you have point and shoots, you have entry-level DSLRs. Look at this kid here. His camera is probably more expensive than mine. Okay? So the question is, what do you do in the face of that? If I take having a better camera than them isn't the answer. And I was reminded of an incident that I also posted about this on our Facebook page. It was like a couple weeks ago, I was at Buckingham Fountain on a Friday night. It was a beautiful night. I was doing skyline sunset shots. And I look around the fountain, and I realize that there are like 30 other people, maybe more, all taking the exact same photograph. Some of them have big honking cameras, and they have their tripods, and I didn't even have my tripod with me. I just had a monopod. And they had better cameras. And some of them were iPhones, and some of them they're little point and shoots. And they were all taking the exact same photo as me. Like, does anyone remember what I did to be different? What did I do to be different?
You went around and you laid down on.
I laid down on the ground. Okay, I said so. I wanted, and that's my thought process. My thought process is that I want to get the shot. We're all taking a picture of the same thing. How can my shot be different. Now, obviously, I wanted to at least, I wanted to be not just different to be for the sake of being different. I wanted to like say something and actually be attractive or interesting in some way. But if it's the same as everyone else's, then you've already lost that battle. And at these parties, where all these parents, they've all got if they've got the exact same photo as me, do I have a chance in hell of selling even one photo to any of these people? No, they've got the exact same photo.
But if they're following you.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a slideshow that I put together to market my photos to these parents. Okay, and so what I want you to do while you're watching these photos slide by is just sort of like make mental notes of what I was doing to try to ensure that the photos I was getting would be different from the photos they were getting. Okay, so I'm going to play this, and then we can talk about it.
Like 4. Okay.
Okay. And don't worry if we don't care about the music if the music's quiet. So, okay. By the way, I did all this in 90 minutes. No, the shooting. All these photos were shot in 90 minutes. Here's that photo, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So for the more technically astute of you who are like maybe cataloging some of the things you were seeing there, I mean, I was taking shots that were just in some cases, ever so slightly different from what other people would do or could do, and in some cases, I just did something completely different. I mean, what are some of the techniques here? Well, shoot at a very low angle, you know, like a wide angle shot, really low. You know, the people who have their entry-level DSLRs or even their big fancy DSLRs they don't know how to use, you know, they're not going to get down like this and shoot like a big group of kids at 24 millimeters like that. Okay, I did a lot of shots like that. I did a lot of shots at extreme telephoto to get the really super shallow depth of field and the beautiful bouquet, you know, behind them. I did. A lot of the other people who were taking pictures there, they didn't feel they had permission to take a picture unless someone was like posing for the camera. So I didn't worry about whether someone was posing for me or not. In fact, some of my favorite pictures in there were ones where they had no idea I was taking their picture. Those are some of my favorite. And I don't mind. I just had this happen to me today where a client was looking at some photos, and there was one group photo that I particularly loved of a family of 6 people. And one kid was looking off that way, the other kid's looking off that way. And she said, oh, I really wish they were all looking at the camera. I'm going to say, well, why? It's like these kids are, you know, they're engaged. They're, you know, it creates a level of interest. Like, what are they looking at? Okay, so just don't be afraid to take a picture of someone who isn't looking at you. Okay, sometimes it's something as simple as that. You know, I encourage them to be goofy. I would like one of my favorite photos is the one where, like, you know, I'm shooting up like that and the kid's like looking down at me like that. Like, he thought I was a complete nut for getting down there, and I'm like, and I was encouraging him to like, I was like saying, okay, come on, you're an 8th grader, you're like big man on campus, come on, like show me. And he says, okay, and he gave me this like great look. I loved that look. You know, parents, you know, they're not going to do that kind of, they don't feel like they have permission to interact with their subjects that way. You do. I will also tell you, I also did one thing that I will confess was really sneaky. And I've done this, I did it photographing some of those large group of kids. I also did it when I photographed my son's baseball team, which is, and I feel bad, I feel guilty admitting this, but I do it deliberately to be like difficult with people. So what I do is when I have a big group like that and I've got all these other people jockeying for position to take the exact same shot I am, I will shoot it directly into the sun. So and use fill flash. So, and this happened to me, so I was taking the shot of my son's baseball team, and one of the parents says, you can't do that. And I said, you know, and I get my lens hood to, you know, to cut down on lens flare and everything. And so he says, you can't do that. I always read you can't shoot into the sun. And I said, well, like, yes, I can. That's what makes me a professional. But that's not enough. But that's not enough. I also said, but there's a reason I'm doing it this way. And he said, well, what's that? I said, well, think about it. If I turn the kids around, so the sun's facing them. First of all, they're all wearing baseball hats. What's going to happen? Their eyes are going to be in shadow. And the ones who aren't wearing baseball hats, what are they going to do? They're going to be squinting. They're going to be going like that. You want a picture of a bunch of kids going like that? And he said, oh yeah, that makes sense. I said, yeah, just trust me. This is good. You know. So, and then he was like all impressed. And he's like going around like telling everyone, wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. Okay? Okay, you know, case closed. At this party, so on a couple of those shots, you know, if you go back and look at them, and if you want to afterwards, I can show you some of these shots. The sun was right over these kids' shoulders. So you ended up getting this nice rim light over their heads and over their shoulders. And I looked at, these parents were really irritated with me. I was like trying to explain, you know, they said, like, why do you have to have them stand over there? I can't get the photograph. And so like I tried really hard to stay patient. I finally said, well, look, I've been paid to get like a good, really good photo of these kids, I'm going to get, if you want to take another photo of them where they're like squinting and going like that and you can't see their faces, because if you want to take that photo, fine, just let me take my shot and I'll be done and go do what you want, you know, what you want to do. And so, again, it's just this process of just thinking differently, like what can I do to try to make it more likely that, or at least a little more likely that my photo will be different from everyone else's. Now, if this were like one of the big photography shows, I would go on to tell you, and there were like 300 people in a conference room in Las Vegas right now, I would tell you that, oh, and I went on and these parents looked at these photos, you know, and they bought thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of photos. In reality, what happened was the parents, and you probably saw them, the very tall, kind of stately looking, like English looking woman, she had hired me to do this. She was just gushing over these photos. She said, oh my God, my friends, I'm going to help you. They are going to buy so many photos, you're not going to know what hit you. And I said, well, you know what, like, you know, from your mouth to God's ears, like, I really hope that's the case. But, you know, and but like, I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's see what happens. So, and I worked hard. And by the way, I was paid for my time to be there. And sure enough, and she's going on and telling me how like rich these people are, and you know, this guy owns this company, and this guy's CEO of that company. They have more money than they know what to do with, and they're all like walking around with D4s, and you know, they don't even know how to use. And you know, no one bought a single photo. I had that beautiful marketing piece, and all, you know, they all went to my website. They all looked at the photos. No one bought a single. Now I still made my money because she paid me for my time, and I did a book for her, and I did a bunch of framed prints for her. So I made my money. But the takeaway from all this, takeaway number one here, is you probably have already, and if you haven't, you will be soon. You've been offered many opportunities to go shoot an event and say, oh, and you can sell anything you shoot. So we can't pay you, but feel free to sell anything you want. My advice to you is, if you want to do that, that's your business, and I'll talk in a few minutes about, you know, why you may or may not want to do that. But don't ever expect to sell a photo to somebody that you shot at an event after the fact. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to that. Like the great one business model I think that does work is, like, have you ever been on the Sea Dog? You know, that big yellow boat down at Navy Pier that goes around at like 80 knots and gets you all seasick and everything, you throw up when you come back? Okay, well, you go on that, and you take your kids on there, and you come back, you get off the boat, and they snap a picture of you, you know, like an Instamatic photo, and then charge you like $30 for it. You know what? You buy it. I bought one of them, and you know, I have it up on my mantle. It's a crappy picture, but it's me and my daughter, and we had this fun day, and you remember it, and you got to take it. You know, I took my kids to Toronto, and we went to the top of the CN Tower, and they do a green screen photo of you with the Toronto skyline behind you, and then charge you like $30 or $40 or whatever for it. That costs them, you know, 12 cents to make. I bought it. Okay, so those kinds of photos, like where you print something right then and there, and it's something unique, you know, there might be a market for that. But I would urge you to assume that if anyone tells you, oh, like, come photograph in our event, and then you can make your money from selling prints, that, you know, assume that you're shooting that event for free. Yes.
Can I just say something really quick? This was many years ago. A woman, I was for a wedding, and she's like, well, if you give me a discount, she's like, everybody's going to buy pictures. This is the first one in the family, whatever. And I'm like, oh, you sure? I can sell it $1,000 worth of pictures? Yeah. I said, okay, well, then you give me $1,000, and when they buy the pictures, you keep the money each day. No. So, yeah. That shuts it.
All right. Okay, so that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, and by the way, when I say takeaway, I was going to mention, like, when I come to these kinds of talks, like, you hear a lot of information, and it sometimes gets kind of overwhelming. You don't know what to do with. I'd say if you can have like one or two things that you like decide you're going to do something with from tonight's talk, what I call a takeaway, then I think it was worth your while. So I'm going to offer possible takeaways. That was one possible takeaway. Another possible takeaway is that if you're looking for a shortcut to make your photography different from all the wannabe, parental and friends point and shoots and iPhones and everything, I find that going for the shallow depth of field and bokeh is probably the quickest way to differentiate yourself, because that's, in my experience, when people look at a photo that has that beautiful, soft, pastel-y background, that instantly says professional to them. Even more so than all this other creative stuff I'm talking about, and the different angles and the wide angle and this and then shooting into the sun, all this kind of stuff. It's like, go for the shallow depth of field. So have a fast lens, if you want to distinguish those, because if they have kit lenses, the lenses aren't going to be fast. So they aren't physically capable of achieving that, even if they knew how to do it, which they probably don't. So keeping in mind the 3 factors that control your depth of field, being aperture, distance from the subject, and focal length. Try to use your knowledge of those to try to keep your depth of field as shallow as possible when you're doing photos of people at these kinds of parties. So question is, how do you start doing these events? Okay, if you haven't already been doing them, and if you have been doing them, how do you increase your exposure? Well, what I did was I just found a not-for-profit organization, namely my synagogue, they had a carnival every year. For those of you who are familiar with the Jewish holiday of Purim, it's a holiday where people get dressed up in costumes, and you have a big carnival, and you have games and everything. And so one year I volunteered to photograph the Purim carnival. And again, they said the same thing. Oh, well, and you can sell photos. We're okay. Okay, fine. Okay. So I said, no, I don't want to sell photos. Okay, I just want to come. I'll shoot it. I'll give you the photos. You can use them in the the newsletter. You can give them to people. Do whatever you want with them. I don't care. Now, I had cards printed up, with the website address where they could go to see the photos, and I was viewing this as an opportunity to learn how to do this, and B, to get my name out there. Because I would urge you, the one thing I urge you to do is, do not learn how to shoot an event by letting someone hire you to do it. Okay, well, I've never shot an event before, but this shouldn't be too hard, and they're not paying me that much. Well, no, that's not fair, I don't think. I think you go out and learn how to do it first. And the best way to learn how to do it is with people who are just thrilled to have you there, who wouldn't otherwise, as a professional photographer, I urge you, don't do it for someone who would otherwise be paying someone like me to do it. Do it for someone who's not going to have anyone there otherwise, and is going to be thrilled if you get one good picture the whole day. They'll be thrilled. Those are the people you go shoot for, because they'll be so grateful to you, and you'll have the freedom to experiment. It's not just a legal freedom or moral freedom, but it's a psychological freedom, where if you're not getting paid, you actually do feel free to take some chances and try some different things and not worry about it if a photograph doesn't work out, because you didn't really make any promises. So for a couple of years, I photographed the Purim Carnival, and coming up with exciting pictures like this one. Okay, so that's my art, that's like my artistic, entrance into the world of non-wedding event photography. But you know what? I did that for a couple of years, and I kept getting my name out. And what did it lead to? Well, you'll see that guy, the guy in the middle, is the rabbi at my synagogue, and it led to me getting hired to photograph a 500-person gala event at the Fairmont Hotel honoring his 35th year at the synagogue. 500 people on a Saturday night at the Fairmont, and where I got paid this was not like a profit, you know, I got, now, I probably wouldn't have gotten that job, and B, I wouldn't have been capable of doing it had I not just like done stuff like this. And I did a lot of other stuff too, where little like not-for-profit kind of stuff where I kind of like honed my craft. And so my advice to you is if you want to learn how to do this stuff. Now, I know, like I should mention, I never worked as an assistant. I don't know if it's my ego didn't let me do it, and so I can't honestly speak to the upsides and downsides of working as someone, learning your craft by working as an assistant, let's say as a second photographer, you know, you might be better able to talk about that than me. But one thing I can say is that there's a world of difference between being lead photographer and being second photographer. Just like mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and how your thought process, you're forced to think about things that you don't have to think about if you're, not, and I'm not, you know, it's not a knock at all on second photographers. You know, Mark either was one of the better ones. Mark works with me all the time. We're doing an event Saturday night, and it's, you know, second photographers are crucial to the success of any like primary photographer's business. But it's a very different role. And I think, personally, the only way you can truly learn the role as lead photographer is to be the lead photographer, even if that means doing it at a Purim carnival, where you have to make all the decisions and you have to figure everything out on your own. So this gala that I shot, this 500-person gala. I again want to show you what sort of like a highlight reel that I showed to the client from that evening. Okay, again, actual photos that I shot that evening. Now, granted, I had a second photographer there with me, but I think like nearly all, if not all, of the photos in this highlight reel were my photos, just because I chose that because I wanted to present it as my work. So I'm going to show you these photos, and again, think about the story. Forget about like, okay, maybe a couple of photos in there are great photos, maybe none of them are great photos, I don't know, that's for you to decide. The question is, you know, does it succeed in telling a story of the evening? And then we're going to talk about that as sort of like an element of event photography. Okay. That's the rabbi. Who's that guy? So there are two key elements there. And again, you don't know the players. You don't know who these people are. I'd like to think you got a little bit of a sense of the emotion of the evening, a feeling of like the emotions he was feeling. And so the two things that I thought about in terms of the storyline were A, again, how he was feeling about the fact that he had 500 people there to express their, like, you know, their love and respect for him. And not just his reaction too, but also his wife and his children. You know, the girl who was, you couldn't really see it that well in the projection, but, you know, she was crying. There was a tear running down her cheek, and that's his daughter. So, so that was number one. I wanted to show that emotion. Number two, who, you know, the key players, the fact that these people, and again, if you know the community, each of these people that you saw, the people who were up at the lectern, the people who were with him were you know, key people in the organization or in the community. So, like, so for these events, again, you could be shooting a carnival or a birthday party, or a 500-person gala. It doesn't matter. You know, you need to prepare yourself. You need to know who are these people. Who are the key people? Who should I care about? Now, you care about everybody in one sense because they're all there. If they weren't there, they wouldn't be there if they were irrelevant. But some people do matter more than others. So you want to ask yourself, well, who are these people? Who do I really want to pay attention to? Who do I really want to focus on in my photography? So when people were up giving a speech, so I might have my second photographer taking a picture of someone who's giving the speech, but if I don't care that much about the person who's giving the speech, I'm focused on the reaction of the rabbi. And that's how I got, you know, my favorite shot maybe of the whole night is that one where he's, you know, like that. Because it just, to me, it just, and again, knowing him as a person too, he's usually not that emotional a guy. It just says so much to me. So, you know, so the story, like, what is your storyline? And every event should have a storyline. Like from the most mundane event up, because that's the difference between just a bunch of snapshots that you took or that you could just, a parent could just as easily take with an iPhone, and what you are doing as like a serious or professional photographer is what story are you telling? And will someone looking at these pictures 10 years from now or 30 years from now get a sense not just of what the event was like, but what these people are actually like? And how do you do that? Well, it's like preparation and then your artistry and your ability to interact with these people and to figure out and to get to know them in the course of the evening. You know, on the technical side, okay, yeah, you have to do all the technical stuff. You have to know, well, you know, what's the space like, and what's my white balance going to be, and what am I going to, well, you know, what aperture am I going to shoot at, and how am I going to coordinate with my second shooter, and you know, and all that kind of stuff. But see, I'm assuming that as the baseline. I assume that, you know, that if you're shooting an event, you've already learned how to do all that. So the question is, how do you then take that knowledge and actually use it to tell a story that your client or people other than your client are going to find memorable or attractive? How are we doing on time? Okay, 8 o'clock. And another question to ask, I think, up front is, you know, what's going to happen to these photos afterwards? Like, don't save that conversation for after the event. Say, okay, well, what are you planning to do with these photos? Well, why don't we create a book? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And sort of establish right from the get-go that something's going to happen with these photos. And I am now I've come to the conclusion, and Matt's going to love hearing this, is that I no longer wait for my clients to say they want a book. I'm now convinced that the way to sell books is to go ahead and design the book and show it to them and say, isn't this awesome? Because if you tell them you want to do a book, well, then that sounds like a lot of work, and they don't know, and it might be a lot of money. But once they see it, especially if you have really good photos and you do good design work, then they have to have it. And that's my new initiative. I'm going to be trying that out in my next couple of events. I'm just going to go ahead and design a book without even asking
And the people said
a client. Yes. And I'm wishing, and as I think back on it, that 8th grade graduation, what I would have done differently now, like I said, I always get something wrong on every event. I think what I got wrong on that one is I should have gone ahead and designed a book, printed it, given it to my client, and had her show it to all her friends. And then they would have to have one. Because God forbid, it's not fair that she has one and we don't. And then I think if I had done that, and maybe not even shown them the photos online, made them wait to see it in the book, but then crank that book out right away, I think that could have been really, really effective. So you heard it here first. That's my new strategy. I'm going to jump ahead. I was going to talk about, I've been shooting, for the last few years, I've been shooting the graduation ceremony at a high school that is housed in Malcolm X College, if you know where that is. Like, it's right near the United Center. And so this is a charter school that caters to, it's a virtual high school. So they only go to class a couple days a week there. They do the rest of the stuff online. And they cater to at-risk kids who had trouble in other high school environments and more traditional high school environments. And I got in there because through very circuitous means, my kid's babysitter was a teacher there. And so she brought me in. She's long gone, but they keep coming back to me year after year. And again, the one thing I'll say about that is they thought they were hiring me just to come in and take some pictures of graduates, with their cap and gown standing in front of a backdrop, and then get what I call a grip and grin, where they're getting their diploma from the principal, they're handed the diploma, they turn, they smile, I take the picture, they move on, next student, you get 100 of those or whatever, and you're done and out, okay? They thought that that's all and who knows, if that's all I had done, maybe they'd have been happy. But I wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted to tell the story. So I got there and I'm taking pictures of these kids as they're getting ready, and I'm taking pictures of them as they're filing out into the auditorium. I'm going back behind, and while the valedictorian is giving her speech, I'm down behind her shooting like this, and so you have her here, and you have this whole auditorium of kids watching. So I'm doing all those shots. Did anyone, has anyone bought those photos? No. But did the school love them? Yes. And in fact, they asked me to create a highlight reel, which they now use in their marketing. Okay. If it had been a commercial endeavor, I would have charged them for that. I didn't charge them just because, these kids, the stories I hear from these kids is terrible. I got a call from a dad once a month after graduation. His kid was killed in a drive-by. Do I have any more pictures of his kid getting his diploma? Okay, stuff like that. Okay, it just just tears your heart out. So like a school like that, so I didn't feel like I'm going to try to, even though the company that runs the school, I'm sure makes money hand over fist, but still. So I just gave it, and I'm guaranteed they're going to keep coming back to me year after year for this thing. And do I make a lot of money on it? No, but I love doing it. It's really fun, and some of these shots do make great portfolio shots. When I'm showing, other stuff, you can say, you have this gorgeous shot of this giant auditorium and the speaker and all this stuff. It makes for cool stuff. So again, just if you're looking for opportunities to photograph, think non-traditional means. High school graduations, a lot of them are done by companies who specialize in that sort of thing, so it's not necessarily something that's going to be easy to break into. But think about, like these days, and this wasn't like it when I was a kid, back when I had to walk uphill both ways to school, miles through snowstorms. But now these days kids graduate from everything. They have nursery school graduations, they have kindergarten graduations, they have third grade, so find a school that's having some nursery school graduation or something where a parent or something, and offer to photograph it just for fun. It gives you the experience, it gives you the opportunity to develop, and you never know who you're going to meet doing this stuff. The last thing I'm going to talk about is bar mitzvahs. Okay, this is, and in a way it's almost not fair to talk about this as a non-wedding event, because it has so much similarity to a wedding. There are probably more similarities than dissimilarities with the wedding. I mean, you basically have a party that is predicated on a religious ceremony. And just like weddings, some are more religious than others. Sometimes the emphasis is 100% on the party, and they don't really care that much about the service. Or maybe they care about the service, but there really weren't any religious components. It was just a civil ceremony. Or sometimes it's in a church and it's heavily religious. Likewise, bar and bat mitzvahs. Sometimes, I've photographed bat mitzvah parties where they didn't want anything to do. They didn't want me to have anything to do with the service. It was just shooting a party. It might as well have been a debutante ball or a quinceañera or whatever. It just happened to be a 13-year-old Jewish girl. Okay? But I've also done them where in Orthodox synagogues, where it's very heavily oriented religiously. And again, the one thing I would urge you in thinking, that if you want to get involved in bar bat mitzvahs is, again, preparation. You have to know what you're talking about. It's more than once I've had a photographer come to me and say, I just got hired to shoot a bar mitzvah. I've never photographed one before. Do you have any advice? And say, yeah, my advice is don't do it. Until you have some experience with it. And especially if it's someone who's not Jewish and doesn't understand what's going on. I mean, I had going for me the fact that I've been steeped in it. I was bar mitzvah myself. My kids have been I've been there as a parent. I've been there as the bar mitzvah boy. I've been there as a parent. I've been there as a guest repeatedly. So I had a lot going for me getting involved in these things. But I'm going to show you the last slideshow I'm going to show you is one from a bar mitzvah I photographed where, and Matt is going to love this, where this family set my all-time record for most photos a family has ever asked to be put in their album. 250. Okay. Now, what is it about? Now, granted, this was a lengthy, complicated event where it started with what's called a Havdalah service. Sometimes you'll have, in many bar and bat mitzvahs, you'll have a Saturday morning service. Sometimes you're allowed to photograph them, sometimes not. Many of them will have a service late in the afternoon into evening called the Havdalah service, which is sort of like ushering in the Sabbath. And in the more observant Jewish communities, you're not allowed to photograph. It's considered the art of creation, and you're not allowed to create on the Sabbath, because on the seventh day God rested. So you're not allowed to photograph until sundown, which is the conclusion of this Havdalah service. So in this case, they allowed me to photograph the actual service, even though it wasn't sundown yet. So I chose this as an example because it gave me sort of, the full panoply of photos, where I have photos, family portraits ahead of the service, portraits during the service, then everyone splits up. You have adult cocktail hour on one floor. This happened to be at the Standard Club. So you have adult cocktail hour on one floor. The kids go up with the DJ on another floor, and then everyone comes together for one giant shebang at the end. So again, I'm going to show you this photo, and again, just sort of as you're watching this, sort of think again about the storytelling. And again, I'm not sure any of these photos will rise to the pantheon of historically great bar mitzvah photos, but I feel pretty comfortable that they tell a good story. And the family obviously agreed, because they were just all over it. They could not have been more thrilled. So just sort of ask yourself, well, why might that be? Oh, and this is the actual highlight reel that I showed to the client when I first unveiled the photos. That's something I always throw in. Whenever there's a younger kid, I always end my slideshow with a photo of the younger kid, and it's letting them know that it's my expectation that when that kid comes around, they're coming to me. So again, it's these elements are all the same. And the fact you could probably say the same thing about wedding photography. I mean, it's about storytelling, but sometimes the story is a little more obvious at a wedding. Okay, they're getting married. That's the story, right? They met each other, they fell in love, all their friends are there to celebrate. That's the story. So at these other events, well, what is the story that you're going to tell? So I think if there's nothing else you walk away from with this, it's to go out and start shooting events. Start small, start non-commercial, start things that where the expectations aren't very high, where you're not getting paid necessarily, but approach it as if this was the biggest job you've ever had, and think about, okay, what is the story I want to tell, and how am I going to tell it? What photos do I need? I have in my head, going in ideas about different little things I like to do in order to tell these stories. Like that photo you saw of I heard a couple people giggle, that kid lying on the bench with a yarmulke over his head. I set that shot up because I knew going in that one of the stories I wanted to tell was just the complete exhaustion that these kids felt by the end of this 8 or 9 hour day. So, and you didn't see them in there, but I ended up not using that storyline, but it was available to me if I wanted it. I had a whole bunch of pictures of kids lying around on the floor in various places that I set up, where I said, okay, pretend you're exhausted, lie under the table. And I got a couple pictures. The parents loved the pictures. They're really fun stuff. I have a couple other events that I've done where another favorite thing I did I did this at the one we shot at the Mid-America Club. I'll get photos of people, if you're in a high rise or a building where there are a lot of elevators and people are leaving the party via elevator, toward the end of the night, I'll position myself, or my second photographer position themselves by the elevators. And each time some group of people gets in the elevators, as the door's closing, I have them wave goodbye. Okay? Great way to tell, to sort of close the book on the evening, especially if I'm doing a slideshow. I'll have a whole series of photos of people waving goodbye at the end, and then a picture of the kid flat out on the floor looking like he's completely collapsed from exhaustion. I mean, it's a funny story. Again, the people love that kind of stuff. And so the question is what do you want to do along those lines to tell, get little gimmicky photos, and it may require you setting something up. It's fine. The parents don't know you're doing it. The kids love it because the kids, you tell them, oh, mom and dad don't know we're doing this. Let's go take a picture they don't know about. Oh, kids, they'll go anywhere with you to do something that their parents don't know about. So, so that's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about absolutely anything. Questions, comments. If you think I don't know what I'm talking about on something, you're probably right. So feel free to tell me so. That's the only way I'll ever learn. So feel free. Kurt.
I thought your slideshows were great. The first one you showed when you were sort of asking us to sort of think what we thought you were trying to, in what ways you were trying to differentiate yourself. I noticed the fades from the color then to briefly a black and white image, and I thought, well, nobody there with their iPhones or SLRs or iPads are going to do anything in black and white. So I thought that was something you were going to highlight. Does that come into play for you ever?
That's true. I should have mentioned, you're right, that two other things I do to try to differentiate myself are both black and white and also creative cropping. You'll notice on some of the shots, some of the tight shots, like a headshot of somebody, I might crop in below the top of the head, do stuff like that people wouldn't, that non-artistic people wouldn't necessarily think of doing. The reason there are a couple of reasons why I like to throw in some black and whites here and there. I just want people to know I can. Some people, sometimes you'll run into families who are really into black and white photography. And so I want to send the message that I can do it, and if they, and I will usually tell them, I'm not going to spend the time to convert everything to black and white just in case they might like it. But if a few key photos I put into black and white, then they know that, and they're free to ask for that. I think it makes for a nice, like, offset also. I've also found that for whatever reason, like event planners, who sometimes you have to cater to in these kinds of things, like to see some stuff in black and white. Like I've never asked why, I probably should, but all I know is they do. So I like to show stuff in black and white. And then there are other things I could have mentioned, for example, like lens choices. So if you're coming to an event where you know you're going to have a lot of competition from people like that, bring lenses that will give you options that they don't have. I just met with an event planner today from an event that I shot like 2 years ago, and she wanted a bunch of photos that she could use in her marketing, which I view as a great opportunity, of course, because it reminds her of how good I am. She loved, like every photo I took with a fisheye lens, she loved. Okay, now granted, fisheye lenses can definitely be overdone. If not done right, they can actually look pretty bad. But if you have it in your arsenal, throw a few in there. Or going to that event, like I had a 17 to 35 2.8 that allowed me to get down really low and get these super wide, the parents on their iPhone, if they want to get a picture of a row of like 17 kids lengthwise, you're going to have to stand 30 feet away. I could get like 8 feet away and get everyone. So yeah, so either in the shooting itself and also in post-production, think about stuff that you can do that'll make, now, but don't fall into the trap that like my daughter's 16, she thinks that if you can do something to a photo, you should.
Yes.
And that makes it cool. You can take a bad photo and turn it into a good photo by like playing with it.
Make it big.
And go through Instagram, and like turn it to sepia or turquoise, or do this or do that, or make it look like it was, taken in a daguerreotype and then ripped into shreds and glued back together, whatever. So don't alter photos just because you can, but just show something a little different or do something that someone else can't do. I think it's a great point. Thing else? Bill? Oh, okay, yeah. Let's see.
How was your approach to use in camera flash, balance? What do you do?
It's different every event. It depends on what, probably the first decision I make when I'm going into like a room like that is how much, well, first of all, we're assuming an evening event, because if it's a daytime event, you've got a lot of daylight, then maybe you're just using fill. So if it's an evening event, I think the first decision you're making is, well, how much ambient light do I want? I mean, first of all, is there ambient light? To begin, is this, like in that bar mitzvah I just showed you, like some of those rooms, there's like beautiful, the walls were lit with purple, and they had like all this beautiful color all over the place. Well, it would be kind of a crime to use my flash to overpower the ambient light, and then you just have like this bright flash and this all blackness behind them. But in some events, you're kind of stuck with that because the room is so dark there effectively is no ambient light, or maybe right, or you have like a really tall ceiling that's all black, and you don't have any place that you can bounce. So I think you have to make that judgment differently every time. But I think, so the first question is like to get the feel of what this room looks like. Do I need ambient light or not? And sometimes I might go really slow on my shutter speed. Just to, if I have to get that, and put up with an occasional shot where someone's moving a little bit, and something that doesn't necessarily even bother me that much. So I might do a whole bunch of shots at on flash at 1/30th. If that's what I have to do to be, because what I don't want to do is go wide open and say shoot everything at 2.8 in order to give myself enough ambient light, and then and then I shoot this group of 5 people, and because they're not all the exact same distance from me, like 2 of the 5 people are in soft focus. Like, I don't, to me, that's more frustrating than having one where someone's maybe moving a little bit, but they're still in in good focus. So I think it's all just playing around with that. And of course, then if you're in an event with a second photographer, then you've got to coordinate because you want the two groups of photos to look at least vaguely like you were at the same event. So, and then of course it's all different when you're doing the portraits. You know, that's all different. So like, you know, if we're using, you know, like I use strobes to do my family portraits before the event, then I don't have to worry about the flash. But I'm still trying to figure out, well, do I want ambient light or not? Any other questions, comments, insights?
You know, how do you
Yeah.
handle when people want to look at the shot you just took in the back of your camera?
Yes. Again, sometimes it takes a reading of the person. Like if it's a kid, I will almost always let them. Because what's going to happen is the kid, no matter what I show this kid, he or she is going to think whatever I did was really cool. And in fact, sometimes I'll encourage them. Sometimes I'll take a shot and say, hey, look what I just got. And then next thing you know, all the other kids are crowding around. And they all want to like mug for the camera and everything. So you can generate. But if I'm reading this person as a sort of like a high maintenance adult who's very concerned about their image, what I'll usually do is, because they're going to hate whatever they see. And it's going to like ruin everything. So what I'll usually say is, well, you know what? You can't really tell from the back of the camera. It's really deceiving. If you're worried about how you looked in that photo, like what are you worried about? Let me take another couple shots. And just trust me. You're going to look great. But I'm a professional. Trust me. My camera, I bought this really expensive camera that can't take bad pictures even if I try. Don't worry. I have this whole list of things that I'll say to try to like reassure somebody. Usually, if then it happens, it's they're looking for reassurance that they're just not going to look stupid. And so you just give them that reassurance, but don't show them the back of the camera because they will, 9 times out of 10, they will hate what they see. So great question. Aaron?
Most difficult situation you've ever dealt with at an event?
Most difficult is, well, one that I've had repeat a couple times now is dealing with a family that is either recently divorced or going through a divorce or badly divorced. So again, that's part of your preparation is understanding the dynamics of what you're dealing with. And when you have, you know, multiple people involved who maybe don't like each other. And so one person tells you to do one thing and then instantly the other person, you know, you have to like think about that ahead of time and figure out, okay, well, how am I going to keep everyone happy here? And it's not, you know, it's not always easy and you won't always succeed. So that's in terms of like human dynamics, that's probably the most difficult situation that I run across like more than once, is dealing with clients who don't like each other or who don't get along. Most difficult technical situation is I find, you know, a lot, you know, like shooting in really big spaces. When it's dark, I tend to find really, challenging, and I'm getting better. But like I said, I'd like to think that 3, 4, 5 years from now, I'll look at the stuff that I'm doing now and say, God, I had no idea what I was doing. I hope so, because that means I'm getting better. And I think that that really requires thinking about like, you know, how you're going to handle this space. Now, again, the more you do it, the more confident you get that you'll be able to walk into a space, look around, and say, and like draw on your experience and know how to handle it. But I think, you know, lighting these big dark spaces is really continues to be challenging for me. And I've never felt comfortable doing what a lot of our members, photographers do, are like they just set up in this big room. They'll set up lights around the room and just have them there, and then use those to light the whole room as they're going. Because I'm always convinced that someone's going to like knock them over and break them, or something's going to start misfiring and I'm not going to realize it. I'd much rather have control, and be able to control what's on my camera. I've started making exceptions, like when Mark and you saw at the end, you do those like giant group shots of the kids. And that's a staple. You do that at every bar and bat mitzvah. We did those at, I was on the team that photographed my son's bar mitzvah a couple of months ago with Gokhan and Nia. And so we always do these big group shots where you might have like 100 kids in this shot. And so for that, like I've long since gave up on trying to light those with on camera. So I'll actually bring in umbrellas and speed lights and light it with that. And even if the group is big enough, even 2 umbrellas. But every event has its own challenge. Outdoor events during the day. If it's sunny, hugely problematic. Pain in the ass. And figuring out where to stand and where to put people and getting the fill flash just right and not having people squinting and it's a pain. I hate bright sunny days. It's like only a photographer can hate a bright sunny day, right?